Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. We're back on Zoom again with one of our favorite people in the state of Maryland. As a reporter, I'm not allowed to like people who I cover. Unfortunately, I do have a soft spot for this guy. He's our Comptroller, Peter Franchot. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a sad day in Salisbury. We lost a native son, Senator Paul Sarbanes, overnight, and I know you have a long history with him. So please, could you start off by reflecting on the great Senator Paul Sarbanes?
Well, he's a wonderful citizen, and his family, I think, still is on the lower shore. He used to go back to Salisbury all the time, but I knew him as a kind of iconic U.S. senator who happened to be, among many other things, one of the nicest people ever to walk on planet Earth. I mean, let's be honest, Paul Sarbanes was a gentleman. And I particularly know that because he befriended my son, who is a wonderful young man, makes more money in a month than I make in a year. He's, off in San Francisco, et cetera. But he had interactions with Senator Sarbanes when he was younger and would accompany me to some events. And the senator took a personal interest in him and wanted to know how he was doing and kept up with him. And it was just way up and beyond the call of duty. And I often noted, I wish I was like Senator Sarbanes as far as his character. And, my hat's off to his family, my condolences. But I'm also particularly proud that he was a Salisbury native and that he came back often to the lower shore.
A lot of the people down here didn't agree with him politically, but his family was one of the great families. I don't know if you know, they had a diner here on Main Street in Salisbury for many years. A classic Greek immigrant survival story, produced an amazing family. And then Tony Sarbanes, who was a principal and a really prominent school board employee for a long time. He was a county council president, and now his Paul's nephew, Jimmy Sarbanes, is our circuit court judge. So just a great family.
I can pretty much guarantee you that all those people that didn't agree with Senator Sarbanes politically voted for him.
Yes. Yeah, very much. Now we've got you on to talk about something that you're trying to push really hard this year, the shopping in Maryland for Christmas thing.
Yes, the patriotic thing to do for all Marylanders is take those that have not been hammered by the pandemic. I'm not talking about the 1.1 million Marylanders who are suffering, filed first-time unemployment, lost their jobs, can't pay their rent, can't put food on the table. Those folks are suffering right now, and this is a completely different audience. I'm talking to the other half of the state who had salaries, who had payments, who had work, who have been hammered by the pandemic in a different way, but not necessarily financially. If you have some money, I'm suggesting you spend it locally. And if you don't need anything because you can't think of anything to buy, call them up and give these local businesses gift cards, because what they need is cash in their cash registers right now to make it through until the medical solution arrives, the vaccine. And they are seriously in need of help. We're talking 30,000 small businesses that have closed permanently. They're never going to open again. And I'm not talking about small little mom and pop shops. I'm talking about significant, iconic local establishments that simply have thrown the towel in. That's a tragedy, but I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. What I'm going to try to do is save the next 30,000 from closing in December and January and February. If we can stop the bleeding, and I think the quickest way to do it is not government grants, it's not federal relief, it's not even state relief. It is citizens stepping up to the counter and doing the right thing.
Well, down here rurally, one of the examples that we were taught as kids, was the fire department example. So yeah, you could go to Salisbury and buy an appliance and save a few dollars, but if you went to the small town of Berlin near where you lived, it would cost a little bit more, but the guy who owned the appliance store there was in the fire department, and he was going to come to your house when you were in need. So you wanted to keep him, solvent, as opposed to saving a few dollars by driving to Salisbury. So there's a brilliance to the whole idea of shopping local.
Exactly. It ought to be more traditional to do that, because Unfortunately, in Maryland, Greg, we never have matched up our rhetoric about how important small businesses are with actual actions to help them. So yes, do we are we shifting now to the internet, to the big box stores, Costco and Target and Walmart and Whole Foods and Amazon? Yeah, we all use those because they're convenient. But we have to remember Main Street, and right now Main Street is supplying the majority of tax revenues for everything we care about in Maryland: education, healthcare, transportation, et cetera. And you're right, the volunteer fire departments are a great example of what people should be thinking about when they make purchases. We are a wealthy state. There is a huge amount of money backed up in people's checking accounts and savings accounts right now. I'm talking about the upper half of the economy, because they've continued to be paid for the last 8 or 9 months, but they don't have anything to spend their money on other than grocery bills and the pharmacy. Can't go and visit anybody, and the virus, unfortunately, is still out there. Okay, take some of that money if you're lucky enough to have that situation. I just spent $500 of my own in Tacoma Park. I'm glad I did. Made people, and I did it safely because, you have to apply by the remote things, or you can call them and order, because a lot of these stores and restaurants now are up on the internet. They're very nimble. And or at last resort, what I suggest is take $250, divide it into $25 chunks, and call these stores and buy a gift card. You may never utilize the gift card, or you may give it to someone else. The key is get some cash in their back pockets right now when they're hanging on by a thread.
I know it must be frustrating for you because you've got a great reputation for getting out and getting among businesses and visiting and honoring the ones that have achieved things. You very close contact with local businesses, and with this situation with the virus, you're not able to get out. It must really be hard for you.
It actually is a new universe for me through Zoom. I mean, look at us. And just reminds me, because I'm, as everybody knows, or everybody I remind people, I'm going to run for governor after this term is up. I will have been comptroller 16 years, and I'm going to move on and try to improve the state of Maryland. And I have traveled almost 1 million miles around the state. And I say somewhat in jest, but not completely in jest, that if I'm ever lucky enough to be governor, first thing I'm going to do is fix every pothole on every road in the state, because I personally have had a experience with that pothole, I can guarantee you. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that I get around. I think it's part of the responsibility of elected officials to be accessible. And I give my cell phone number out, my personal cell phone number, to people, and I'm happy to give it to you. I know you have it, but 301-332-1961. You can text me, you can voicemail me. If you're in my contact list, I'll actually answer the phone, but I will definitely get the message.
That's really unique, sir. Now, I think I've had you on 6 times, and all 6 times I've asked, are you going to run for governor? And you give me we'll have to see what happens and all that stuff. But yeah, the cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah, I'm all in, and I'm going to campaign like I'm 10 points behind. But it's time. Some other younger person should come on and be comptroller. It's now a cool job. Everybody and their cousin wants to be comptroller. So great, that's terrific. And I get to roll the dice. I don't have to. I'm not term limited. I could be like Louis Goldstein, but I've decided to take a shot at running for governor. And obviously I'm privileged and honored that and pinch myself that I'm actually able to do that and pass the laugh test. And if I get there, people are going to get this customer service, picking up the trash, fixing the potholes, answering the darn phone and every agency like we do in the comptroller's office. And they're going to like that for the first couple of months. And then I'm going to propose fundamental reforms that are going to provide better education, better transportation, better health care for less money. I'm not talking about asking people to vote for me because I'm going to spend a lot of your money on things that sound good. I'm asking people to vote for me for governor because I'm going to give you good results with the money that we spend. And I want you to judge me by the results, not the dollar signs. And I think that's a fundamental change in the state's fiscal and economic policies that I, as comptroller now for will have been 16 years, I can actually go to people and say, you know what, it's not just all hot air. I'm actually going to do this with your support. And we're going to make the state a fabulous, go-to, interesting, innovative, entrepreneurial, growing state that not only do we keep our young people here because they like the state, but we recruit new young people from around the country who come and say, God, they're really doing something special in Maryland. It's not just, oh, Maryland, that little smudge mark on the map. In the Chesapeake Bay. No, it's going to be, we get it as far as the post-pandemic economic recovery. And I want to be part of that. So, yeah, I'm kind of ginned up and excited, but, politics is always a roll of the dice.
Those of us who are paid to watch you closely in the Board of Public Works, and you're able really to show your leadership there. You've carved out kind of a niche for yourself on issues, but at the same time, you know how to work as part of the group and with the governors before you, and they haven't all been easy to work with. Tell us about how the Board of Public Works works and what your role is and how you are able to assert yourself there.
No other state has anything quite like our Board of Public Works. It's three people, the treasurer elected by the legislature, me elected by the people independently, and the governor elected independently by the people. The three of us under state law and the Constitution have to approve every large contract that the state enters into. This is not a legislative authorization or something. This is the actual contract, taxpayers' money leaving the door. Anything over $200,000, you have to have at least two votes of the Board of Public Works. What's unique about that is that we're all independent. Some states and cities, like Baltimore City, has a Board of Estimates. The Board of Estimates has 5 people on it, 3 of them appointed by the mayor. So there's no great mystery when something controversial comes up on the agenda, how it's going to turn out. If the mayor likes it, it gets approved. If the mayor doesn't like it, he gets defeated. That's not the Board of Public Works. Every 2 weeks we meet, we vote on average $415 million in state spending contracts, and it goes like clockwork. And yeah, I think I've got a niche there as someone who actually reads the background and briefers and is willing to put my hand up and say, this needs to be either deferred or defeated, or we need to take another look at this. And, I've had a very positive relationship with Governor Hogan, who's a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I have one with Treasurer Kopp. By the way, it's her birthday today, 79th anniversary of Pearl Harbor Day. I try to not remind her of that, but happy birthday, Treasurer Kopp. And the three of us work together very well, and I consider the board to be a safe harbor of rational functioning adults, which is not typical in politics these days.
Well, we were all watching your last meeting last week, or maybe the week before, because the pipeline discussion down here in Salisbury, and it was an issue that surprised me. I wasn't expecting any kind of real controversy about it, but some of the environmental groups were opposed to extending a gas pipeline down into Somerset County that would run through Salisbury. Most of them were opposed because they didn't want to promote the idea of more fracked gas from Pennsylvania. Others thought the pipeline was going to be above ground. There were a lot of misconceptions about it. Went to Public Works. You guys had to make a vote, and I thought your explanation and your vote, you were very articulate, and you were able to explain both sides of the issue, and it's helped me when I go around socially and people ask me what's going on with this thing. I can sort of adopt what you said because it was thoughtful and it made sense to the argument.
Yes, natural gas, the pipeline is well-deserved by the lower shore. The rest of the state has it. You guys didn't, or Somerset didn't have it. And look, natural gas is a bridge to the future where we have more geothermal, solar, wind, et cetera. And so ultimately, fairness plus the bridge concept got me to vote for this. I do not criticize the opponents of natural gas, who all came down and testified and sent me 4,000 letters. They're all very concerned about climate change. It's a perfectly valid concern. They view the natural gas pipeline as something that is symbolic of a continued commitment to fossil fuels. I'm with them that we need to transition off. And guess what? I've got another powerful entity with me that is also in favor of phasing out fossil fuels and moving to renewables. You know what it is, Greg? It's the fossil fuel industry itself.
Absolutely, they are working very hard to convert. During the whole Biden fracking comment during the debate, the biggest proponents of going green are the oil companies themselves.
Yes, and it's all going to happen, and it's partly going to come because of the activism of the young people that were unsuccessful on this particular issue. So I just urge everybody to stay tuned, because we're going to do, they're not elitists. They're not people that have some communist intent to bring down the national economy or something. No, they're good people who actually care about Mother Earth and want to protect it from global warming, which is a real threat. And I applaud them. And I felt, I think at the hearing that you mentioned, I tried to thank them for their participation, even though they're intensely upset, obviously, because they have never lost a pipeline vote yet in Maryland. This was the first so-called environmental defeat of a pipeline. I don't think it was a good typical pipeline that they are normally successful on.
You do work closely with the governor, and I think he's kind of distinguished himself with his handling of the coronavirus situation. He was really out there in front of it early, made a lot of tough decisions, really vilified down here in our resort town of Ocean City. The restaurateurs want to keep everything as open as possible. You're there by his side. How do you feel the governor's doing in terms of managing this crisis?
I always applaud him and his team. I think they've done a very competent job. Now, he's also running for national office probably after he's governor. He's term limited. And so, he's changing his focus and his emphasis a little bit on this. And I think everybody right now is scrambling to try to get this last couple of months of the pandemic's negative health aspects under control. And the problem with this issue, of course, is that we never quite connected a lockdown with federal and state relief. So we did the lockdown back in March and April and whatever, and we didn't provide adequate relief. The first stimulus actually did, but then it ended and it hasn't been around. So now we've got politicians out there saying, geez, people are going to die if we don't do a lockdown. And then we have people with small businesses saying we're going to lose our businesses if you do a lockdown. And it's a crazy situation. We need to do as much as possible as far as protecting our public health and safety, and have a complete federal and state relief plan for everybody that's affected. I mean, the first stimulus, Greg, was $2.2 trillion. If you, just to give you an idea how much that is nationally, if you put $2.2 trillion dollar bills end to end, just dollar bills, they would go all the way from Earth up into space, all the way to the sun, all the way around the sun, which is a huge entity, and all the way back to human Earth. I mean, it's just an unimaginable amount of money. Maryland itself got, I think, upwards of $20 billion from the first stimulus. The problem is it was never connected to the public health issue. So we have a disconnect now. We have some people yelling, we want more public safety. We have other people yelling, no, we want more open business. And it's just a tragedy that we're in this situation. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Come June or July, we're going to have access to a vaccine for the largest group of us. And that's going to help us get back to normal. But how ironic is it that right when the vaccine's about to come and save us, we're having this tremendous upsurge in infections and illnesses. And I just saw Rudy Giuliani is now in the hospital struggling for his life because, I mean, really, it's just tragic what we're going through. And I urge people to, you know, if we get a second relief plan, which looks likely, it's a significant one, that would be good. I'm also pounding the table and saying right now Maryland needs to match its actions with its rhetoric as far as small business. I suggest they take $1 billion from the rainy day fund, $585 million from the positive fund balance that we have, and we take out $1 billion in debt. We take that $2.5 billion and put it to work immediately in Maryland as of yesterday, helping people pay their rent, get food on the table, and small businesses survive. That would be money well spent. If we don't spend it, we're going to have to spend $10 billion over the next few years rebuilding the economy because of the economic damage that people can't survive. But most importantly, we could more credibly say to people, you need to shelter in place. You just can't in December and January move forward as if we need to liberate small businesses from public safety restrictions. You can't do that. It's just going to be deadly. And so we're a little soft on that right now. Governor Hogan's kind of back and forth in between here, there. You know, he tells me rationally, I can get his argument. He says, look, Peter, we need to save the money because who knows what's going to happen next year. That's true. We could have a god-awful bigger recession. But frankly, that money needs to be spent right now. And it once again, like natural gas is a bridge to renewables, this state relief is a bridge, a little bridge over the next 30 days between now and when the Congress finally gets its act together. Because if you don't have the stimulus, if you don't have the relief, you're never going to have people supporting the public health lockdown. Let me mention that word, not that I'm in favor of lockdowns, but that's in effect what we're talking about. But you got to combine it with relief, with money. You've got to have a new paycheck protection program. That proved to be invaluable. If we do that, we're going to see the greatest economic growth in our history, second half of next year.
There will be a General Assembly next month, and things are different than General Assembly now. For a long time there, you were a Democrat who was not liberal enough to satisfy Thomas V. Mike Miller, our Senate president. You had kind of a target there on your back for a long time. It seemed like he wanted to try to diminish every power that you had. He's gone. It's a whole new generation. What are you looking forward to out there?
Well, first of all, they need, the legislature's coming back, but it's going to be a pandemic related legislature. And I think we need to trim our sails as far as some of the larger, bolder, more expensive plans that are on the table. I think we need to revisit those. But you're right, it's a new generation. Senate President Ferguson and Speaker Jones, I both served with for many years. It's, put it this way, they're a lot bigger fish to fry than, let's harass Franchot because he's a friend. He doesn't castigate Governor Hogan every time we come and tell him to. It's okay. It's going to be okay because I think the state is poised. This is a little counterintuitive. I think we're poised to be one of the number one states in the country as far as the economic recovery, if we can just get out of our way. And the two big problems there are the state tax structure, which is kind of like a Christmas tree. Every time we want something new that sounds good, we just put another ornament on the tree. And the budget is not rational. So that's number one. Number two is the local level. Less so on the shore because you have a tradition of small government, but in the big counties, Montgomery, my home county, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, the local regulation's just out of control, and it's not properly overseen by the government officials. And as a result, it's become a huge impediment to small businesses getting going. So if we could rationalize the tax structure at the state level and the regulatory impediments at the local level, the state could take off like a rocket because we are very geographically well placed. We have strong economic bones. We've got all sorts of assets, and sky's the limit. But we'll see what the legislature comes up with. I'm urging them not to raise taxes during this session, no matter what they connect it to. Just do no harm until we get to the second half of next year, and then we can begin to, if they want to go back I just think we need to take a lot of what they've created in architecture in the legislature and examine it this session and make sure that it's affordable, and wait until the next session to take any further actions.
Comptroller Peter Franchot, thank you so much for spending time with us. Do you want to give us your final holiday salute?
Yeah, my best wishes to everybody. And, one of my neighbors has a big pretend, what should I call this thing? It's a pretend toilet with a big arrow up above it with year 2020 letters on it. And it's pointed directly down into the toilet bowl. So that's as far as I'm concerned. I want people to realize that there's going to be a much better year, 2021.
Well, thanks so much for your service, and thanks so much for your time, and we really appreciate you spending time with us here today. Thank you again.
Thanks, Greg. All the best. Bye-bye.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.